Dan Kurzbrock. I am the co-founder and executive grain officer of a company called ReGrained. So we are at the forefront of a food revolution. About 40% of all food that we grow in this country is wasted. We're not just talking about wasting the resources that it took to grow that food or the calories that food could have provided, but it's also a massive business opportunity. We founded ReGrained to be a food waste fighting venture that exists to close nutrient loops. We call this process food waste alchemy, and it's basically the realization of the circular economy or cradle-to-cradle thinking for our food system. And we've already started by creating food from beer. That's the shirt. Why are we creating food from beer? Because it turns out that the beer brewing process creates a massive amount of edible waste in the form of grain. This grain is high in protein, high in fiber, and it is currently considered spent by the industry. It's a byproduct waste stream. And we think that you'll agree that there's a lot worth saving left in this grain. As Americans, we love beer. 2 new breweries are opening per day right now, and in the country we consume 6.3 billion gallons of beer. Now, to save you some mental math, the grain equivalent of 1 year's worth of grain could produce 34 loaves of bread for every American, or, put it in sweeter terms, that's 1,362 cookies each. So, my partner Jordan and I started ReGrained as undergraduate homebrewers, united by a love for sustainable business, for food, of course for beer. And that hunch that we could take the waste from our own hobby and turn it into something that's delicious has continued to be compelling. We won a grant from Burt's Bees earlier this year, pitch competition from Target. I've been very fortunate to receive some great press and publications like Huffington Post and Forbes, and it's really all around our first line of the application of this ingredient, which is granola bars. That showcase it, which I have with me today. I'd love to share some with you. It's really just the start. Really what we're trying to build is a new ingredient in our food system that's alchemized from this waste stream, something that can simultaneously feed people and reduce waste. I'll tell you a little bit about why it's a great ingredient. In terms of nutrition, it's got about as much protein as almonds and more than 3 times the fiber of oats. It performs really well as a baking ingredient, similar to whole wheat flour. It's an upcycled ingredient, so it is unparalleled in terms of environmental impact. And in terms of flavor, that'll ultimately be for you to decide, but the stuff is delicious. So, as a consumer brand, we have a lot of excitement about what we can do with the bars, and it's a way to get into the market, generate awareness, but ultimately pave the way for other applications of the ingredient, things like baking mixes, crackers, but ultimately flour, which at scale we can sell as a B2B ingredient to other food manufacturers. In terms of IP, you can't protect the use of an ingredient, but what we're doing is we're inventing the technology to make it something that is food grade, and we're working with the USDA on that effort. We're raising our seed round, I'm out of time, but we think it's a delicious business imperative, and we don't want you to just think about it, we want you to chew on it. So come find me later. Thank you.
So bars are a pretty crowded market, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we started with bars because it was a product that we could make in our own kitchens and get a prototype out and just see what people thought of it. We could make a lot of them and package them, or like a lot of the time it was really dozens, now we're making thousands. It is a very crowded market. Eventually, we could see the bar line becoming a kind of like a powered by Intel model with, like, let's say, a Cliff Bar or Kind Bar that uses our ingredient, but we know that we have to prove that we can use this ingredient in all the different applications first, and that allows us to generate revenue and awareness as we work on the ingredient side of things, which will take longer to commercialize at scale.
Can you talk about your process of taking what is, it sounds like not food grade to making it food grade?
Yeah, so it is basically a fancy way of dehydrating. So the issue with this stuff is that it's really wet. Making beer is like making a giant batch of oatmeal on the first step of the process. It's sopping wet, it rots in 8 hours after this grain is created. So basically we need to dehydrate it. And we're working with leading experts at the USDA and all the different drying technologies. And then we're developing our own application of it that is uniquely suited to the urban environment, which is where this inefficiency is most pronounced.
How are the big brewers who claim zero waste in their facilities, how are they claiming that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So the historical paradigm is that brewers will work with farmers who will take this grain and use it as a livestock feed predominantly. The macro beer is using rice and corn and things that you wouldn't really want to eat. But it is, so they are diverting it, but we're proposing a higher use, especially for the barley-based beer, which is craft beer. So this stuff is a lot of protein, it's a lot tastier, and there's a lot more applications in terms of actually feeding people as opposed to going one round down in the food recovery lab.
Do you have samples?
Yes, lots. I was told I can't hand them out to you as I come up, but I would love to give you some. We can all eat beer.
They're delicious. I had one yesterday.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so it's not just a novelty, it really is
Yeah,
a
so
tasty product.
that we want to make the right thing the easy thing, right? So like obviously we're very heavy-handed with our beer branding. We realize that kind of fits us, and it seems like it's a niche initially, but in the crowded market of food, packaged food, bars especially, we need something to stand out, which also allows us to do cross-merchandising and other alternative channels like selling in the beer section of a grocery store, for example.
Dan, what is your what does your supply chain look like? Are you going to be co-located with the breweries? Obviously, this is a time-sensitive process if it
Sure.
wraps within 8 hours.
Yeah, so what we're looking at is an urban environment. So there are a few different models, one of which, depending on what the technology looks like for processing it, right now we decentralize it, but we may house the technology at the brewery itself or have a mobile operation depending on the direction our IP goes.
So how does it compare price-wise to other raw materials you would use to make these bars? Is this going to be dependent on the desire to have the food waste as the product?
Yeah, I mean, so the virtue of it is definitely something that is getting manufacturers excited. I know I'm out of time, but to quickly answer that question, because this is not coming from a raw crop, there is a lot, essentially all we have is our processing costs, right? So whereas like an almond flour, which is high in protein but isn't very functional, that's wholesales for like $8 or $9 a pound typically. We can get this stuff wholesale, the price is down below $2 a pound, no problem. So it really depends.
Thanks,
There's a wide
Dan.
range. Yeah, thank you.